Everything I've Learned About the Rake by Dead Palette.
In 2010, I had an encounter with an entity I've come to know as the Rake, and since then, I've been quietly investigating its existence. However, after anonymously publishing this info dump, I will be retiring from researching this subject anymore. Thankfully, my job as a journalist for a Christian lifestyle magazine allowed me to multitask and collect information about the creature in question while I did my real job. I'm contributing what I know and can confirm to the best of my knowledge. It is time for me to move on now, if that is possible. So let's back up to the incident in question. My daughter, 12 at the time, and I were driving from a medium-sized city in a certain state to a rural area of the same state to see some family. This is a trip we'd made countless times. It had always been just us since her mother passed in birth, and seeing family is important to us. Anyway, we'd always stop at this Amish farmer's market that was on the roadside on the way there. We'd pick up some corn, potatoes, and yams. Maybe some fresh Amish donuts, if they made them that day. The young women that tended the market there were just a few years older than my daughter, but had to work in the sun and in this one unair-conditioned shed. They'd always have bright red cheeks, coated in sweat. It felt like they were a world apart from us. I'm no stranger to faith. Religion is a big part of my life, obviously. It's my job. But they seemed somewhat trapped. Still, my daughter cherished going to buy directly from the farmers. I think it helped her appreciate all the work that goes into a meal. Regardless, I grew more uncomfortable with the arrangement over time. And on one trip, I could feel something wrong. Just a bad feeling about stopping there. I must have thought it was just that dread of looking at those young women stuck in that situation. But now I think it was an omen, or a warning from God. It's something I never feel, a kind of a supernatural dread. I remember looking ahead in the road and turning off my daughter's music, just trying to piece together this feeling and what it meant. But nothing came, visually at least. Just a bright, sunny day behind the bluish tint of cheap sunglasses. My daughter asked if something was wrong, and I responded asking her if she still wanted to stop at the Amish market. She said yes, and now I know I shouldn't have asked. I should have made the decision for us and trusted God. Of course, I know that'll sound irrational to a large portion of people. Fine. I should have trusted my gut. Point is, I feel stupid for not making better decisions. We pulled up and turned off the car to hear the typical sounds of a sunny rural day. It isn't the sound of a chain store, obviously. No hushed talking by long distances. No near-silent electrical hum from lights and power lines. No cars or wind tunneling off large concrete structures. It wasn't the city's silence. It was nature's. A sound that was normally refreshing was now giving me an out-of-body feeling. I had a hyper-awareness I hadn't felt since I was deployed overseas. My daughter and I walked out of the sun and into the shed they sold produce out of. It has a wide barn door-sized opening that you parked in front of. Normally, someone would exit from the back and silently greet us with eye contact and a wave. Their English was usually lacking, but this time, no one came. My daughter went to pick out some corn near a glass window, and I went to the counter with an old cash register that must have been from the 70s. Beyond that was the back where the Amish girls would arrive from. Leaning in to see a glimpse of someone possibly back there, something red caught my eyes. Then, in a single moment that couldn't have lasted more than 5 seconds, everything happened. I came to realize there was blood against the bottom of the wall past the cash register and below. An Amish girl I recognized, nearly torn in half. At the same time, my daughter said, "Dad," in the most concerned voice she's ever uttered, and I turned to look out the window where she was. Far in the distance, in a bright sunny field brought into focus by the dark, shady interior boxing it in, was that thing. A perversion of the human form. Sickly white shape with large dark eyes that I felt meet mine from the instant I turned my head. The body of the thing was so thin and skeletal. It looked almost fragile in a way. It was hunched over in the grass when I saw it, but started to stand a second later, revealing not only its giant claw-like hands, but the body of a young Amish man in its grasp. The worst thing was, it knew. I felt like it was too late. In a matter of 3 minutes, from that first odd feeling in the car until then, it felt like I discovered a new reality and was about to be scraped from this world. With no other option, my daughter and I went to the front of the shed's large opening and walked to the car, attempting not to jostle the thing any. We got inside the car and I pulled my handgun out from the glove compartment and loaded it. Then I called the police. Right as I connected with the operator, glass shattered. At first I thought it was our car, but it was the window in the shed. The poor young man's corpse was thrown into it. We pulled out and drove off while I was managing the phone, gun now in my daughter's hands, shaking it. We didn't speed off, but we kept a steady pace, and after managing to spit out the pertinent information about the dead Amish and where they were, I handed the phone back to my daughter and took back the gun. She had been taught to never touch a gun, so of course she was panicking. That, and we'd just seen a literal demon of some kind. There, in the flesh, moving, in broad daylight. That was the end of the first encounter of 2 I've had with it. In total, seeing the thing only lasted 5 seconds, but they're burned into my mind, especially its eyes. There was something spiritual about them, something that I want to explain so badly, but it just can't be. At least not with my lexicon of mortal English. And my daughter is no different. She had nightmares about this, of course. She'd have nightmares just watching a scary movie, let alone living one. I've had them too, imagining that girl behind the register was my daughter. Without going into my sources or the rest of that awful experience, police found 7 dead in the family at that farm. The thing stalked the field all day, according to survivors, and they had no way to call out or defend themselves. They concluded what I've come to conclude with talking to my daughter and pastor, as well as various other people whose opinions I value. It was a demon given form in flesh. And police, unsurprisingly, couldn't very well write that into a report. But make no mistake, the people behind the badge believed our accounts. No one was blamed. It was chalked up to a serial killer. From then on, I wanted to know more about what we witnessed that day. So I looked into similar unexplained accounts, mentions of monsters that fit the description I saw, and any public records that seemed to link in. Until now, I'd logged all this privately with few ever seeing what I've collected. I've done this to prevent fake accounts by hucksters looking for attention. The information I'm about to share isn't complete, but just the bullet points that are consistent with what I experienced. Trust me, 50% of this business was filtering out obvious fake accounts, 45 debunking much less obviously fake accounts where something smelled fishy. Of the remaining 5, here's what illustrates instructive info. 1983. A family from Tijuana, Mexico visited family in upstate New York. The family consisting of 2 parents and 4 children, and 4 family members living in New York. While at Van Cortlandt Park, the children went on an unsupervised hike and reported an entity fitting the description. After returning to Tijuana, Mexico, 2 children residing in New York were killed and their parents temporarily suspected. A mere 3 days later, the entire Tijuana family was killed in an attack, consistent with the demon. 1997. 4 hunters were discovered dead in a Utah deer hunting ground. The official ruling was they were attacked by a bear or multiple bears. However, no physical evidence of a bear was found. No blood or fur from bears. Evidence suggests the hunters fired with each other down sight, as in at each other. This means a struggle of some kind happened. It makes no sense that they were hitting nothing but trees and the ground. Also, some shots hit high in the treetops. This seems to suggest it was jumping great heights or dropping down on them. I wouldn't mention this case as concrete and well supported as a rake attack, if not for the claw marks being so wide apart as to not be possible by any species of bear. 2003. This one haunts me because I'm a single parent. A single mother in a southeastern state in the U.S. had ongoing problems with her son saying he saw this thing. She took him to a therapist and journaled her struggle with thinking he was traumatized after leaving an abusive relationship with his father. Then she herself sees the thing at night, in her bed, speaking to her via thoughts, telepathy. That's a consistent aspect that's brought up in the few cases I have with first-hand witnesses. Sadly, they didn't survive. She attempted to defend herself days later with the shotgun she purchased for protection from her ex. I'm sorry I had to be vague with the details on that account, but it could lead to giving up a source that broke rules for me. It could also lead to my identity, my proxy, my daughter's. Now I've handed the rest of my information to a trusted person. Eventually, when it's safe, they'll release the full info dump. But for now, this is it. If you don't see any new information like this soon, you can assume I'm alive and safe, having washed my hands of this. Might not be the case, but it probably is. I'll summarize what I know. The rake seems to hunt deer and people, other animals as well, but mostly those two. However, no account describes it eating, at least none I believe. While there is one account I can note to be plausible that insinuates the thing stealing cooked meat, there are details that lead me to believe something else was occurring besides said meat's consumption. It seems to attack without reason, or perhaps feeds off something non-physical. It doesn't seem of this world at all. From what I saw, it does have a mouth, but many seem to have trouble recalling this detail, perhaps due to its hypnotic eyes. It can communicate telepathically. I didn't experience this myself at the Amish market, nor did my daughter, but people who witness it for longer periods of time all describe this. It seems to speak more clearly to young people. I can't confirm this aspect. It just seems to be a trend. It is also extremely territorial and gives off warnings to leave in many cases. With at least 5 cases I found, it can track people and travel incredibly fast. Bearing in mind I live in America and don't have reliable sources on the internet, it seems stuck on the North American continent. And yes, I do believe it to be one of a kind. Often people will describe it making a screechy type sound. For reasons I won't go into, this seems to be an indicator I found a fake story. But at least one account I know to be factual has reported this. Hard to tell for sure, but we didn't witness this. The being is also very quiet and stealthy, able to get inside buildings and structures without making a peep. Lastly, I can confirm one thing is a dead giveaway for a fake account. That is the thing driving people mad. Every time someone suggests it has driven a normal citizen to kill or do terrible things, the evidence bears no fruit. Now that we've arrived here, I must explain why I'm done with this whole thing. My daughter has recently moved out for college, and I've mostly been alone in my free time. The person I care about more than anyone else might be in danger. She went on a camping trip and says she saw it again. I didn't want to downplay her experience, but I wasn't convinced at first. I thought maybe being outside the nest brought back those memories. Maybe it was a nightmare for her, but really, I think I was just in a sort of denial. I didn't listen before. That's how I entered into this story. But I was given another warning. She called me about that trip 2 nights ago, and last night I saw it outside my apartment, 3 stories down in an alleyway across the street. I called my daughter right then and there in the middle of the night and told her I loved her. It was a terrible thing to put her through, but I didn't want to not say goodbye if that was the end for me. She needed to know. Eventually, it wandered off. I felt it speak when looking into its eyes. The message was blurry, but I'm certain it was a kind of warning. I hope I'm not violating that warning by posting this. As a Christian man, I feel I've been tested many times in my life, and I've done good. I'm not free of sin, but I've done good, and I raised a good daughter. However, I don't feel this has been a test from God, but a test from the devil. A test from God is fair. Do right or do wrong. This isn't that. Either I say nothing and don't speak the truth, letting people get potentially hurt, or say something and risk my daughter's life as well as my own. I can't even be sure that's the choice I'm making here. So, I've taken the choice out of my hands. My daughter made the choice to delete or post this. I hope she made the right decision.
Everything I've learned about the Rake was written by Dead Palette. Narration by King Mob. Editing, mastering, and original music by Abysme. Comprehensive links below. YouTube.com/Creepypasta is a collaborative channel. Please subscribe if you want to follow our content. If you want to support the channel, please consider liking, commenting, and sharing this video with like-minded members of the community.